Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. It is a beautiful February 8th, 2020. Coming up with the CRUSTY CANUCK podcast today. More handouts from our beloved Prime Minister, a media license talkback and debacle. All that and more coming up on the CRUSTY CANUCK podcast. Stay tuned.
Hit it, sweetheart. Because I am hard, you will not like me.
Aye, sir.
There is no racial bigotry here. Here you are all equally worthless.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Sometimes we're equally worthless. Sometimes we are worthwhile. I'm CRUSTY CANUCK, and this week's episode of the CRUSTY CANUCK podcast, I will be discussing the whole handout issue that Justin Trudeau just announced today in Ethiopia, as well as Mr. Robert Guilbeault, Mr. Heritage Minister, and his media licensing debacle. But first, let's talk with... let's talk about Justin Trudeau giving another $10 million out to a small African nation in the name of gender parity. You and I both know it has nothing to do with parity or helping the less fortunate. It's about helping himself and his conglomerates get a seat on the UN Council. Now, I was just watching something on CTV News Network there. And of course, everyone's praising him, going, "You just go, Justin. Yay. You get us a seat on the UN Security Council and everything would just be fine." Wrong. Now, you've heard me rant about the UN before. You've heard me rant about the so-called globalist agendas and everything. I don't buy half the conspiracies about it, but I'm starting to see more and more every day on how we are trying to be herded into a collective when it comes to globalism. Now, you've heard me rant about Justin spending this and spending that and his whole party being frivolous with our dollars and giving away money for, let's say, fridges and freezers and electric car stations and helping MasterCard out, like I mentioned in my last episode. And now another $10 million to a small African nation that has had a history of oppressing its own people in the name of religion, in the name of tribalism, and in the name of, food. Who remembers the big starvation crisis that happened in the 1980s with Ethiopia? Right? That's when Bob Geldof and other musicians got together and created Live Aid to save the starving people and all that good stuff. And hey, I remember, watching on television, I was just blown away the amount of support that happened. But then the more you think about it, here's a country that refused to help itself. Right? Now, to any of my listeners out there who happen to be of Ethiopian descent, my apologies. I'm not trying to be bigoted or trying to be rude or mean or anything of the sort, right? I'm a very welcoming individual. I believe Canadians of all colors and creeds deserve prosperity and liberty in this country. But when we have a prime minister that turns around and just hands out more money, he's not doing it for the sake of helping anybody. He's doing it to help himself. Okay. Again, another handout, another here. I'm showing my support for gender parity. It's like, is that a real crisis in today's world? Is it? Ask yourself that. Is it a giant crisis in the world that we have to have more women in charge? Well, I'd say give the job to the better person, no matter what circumstance. Give the job to the better person, right? And I think there's a hell of a lot more issues going on in Ethiopia and other African nations than gender parity, right? We've seen how that dynamic has ruled this nation, right? We couldn't build a pipeline because of gender parity. We couldn't get some roads and bridges sorted out because of gender parity. Miss McKenna, when she was environment minister, and Mr. Trudeau have said the social impact of gender parity, of male construction workers and male oil workers alike. Yeah, and how well will that go over? And how do they sidestep about that? Like I've said numerous times, ladies and gentlemen, I have worked with some wonderful women in the Canadian Armed Forces. I have worked for and worked with side by side. And they all got there based on merit. They didn't get there based on, having a little wink here and there or a little flirt here and there. They did the same work as any man. And there's your parity for you, doing the same work. It has nothing to do with what's between your legs or how you blink or how you deal with a situation. It's a matter of you've got the cojones, the intestinal fortitude to get something done. Right? And breaks weren't made for them. They weren't given any special treats or any special privileges, you know. Now, we all heard rumors behind closed doors about this and about that, but that's, I'll leave that for another episode and another story. But as far as I can remember, there weren't special breaks or tweaks made, right? And the government at the time was promoting quite a bit of equality, making it easier for some people to get in. But nonetheless, every female that I worked with and worked for pulled her weight, just the same as any man did. So it's got nothing to do with being equal. It's about being real, right? So every time I hear a handout, this government that makes and commits to handing things out in the name of parity, you're not going to solve the world crisis by opening the door. Give them the tools, give them the skills to open up their own bloody door, right? Like I've had to, like my parents have had to, like my grandparents have had to, right? I got nothing against helping a nation out that has starving people. I got nothing against helping any nation out that needs a human rights upgrade. But if you're going to give away $10 million, especially in this country where they need that $10 million, i.e., you know, for clean water, you've heard me rant on over and over again, and especially keeping people going, keeping the infrastructure going, right? What's wrong with that, right? It goes to prove that Justin Trudeau does not care about Canada. He doesn't, you know? He doesn't care about this country. He cares about his small little brackets and his small little pockets and his little group of people, right? And he doesn't represent the voters. He doesn't represent people that actually vote him in. He doesn't care. He wants a seat in the Security Council. He wants the glory, right? And yet, what is the UN, what have they been doing lately? They've criticized construction of the pipeline in BC, chalking it up to racism, right? Using that word, overusing that word, time and time again, right? And yet half the people in, if I mispronounce it, Wet'suwet'en, you know, half of the nations in that area are all for the pipeline. So there's no rampant racism there. Misinformation, disingenuine, you know, calling everything racist, you know. Even with the coronavirus that's happening, you know. My apologies to those Chinese Canadians that were harassed, but that's not the country's consensus. The country's consensus was, what are we going to do about it? And of course, every CBC article has said, oh, it's racism, when it wasn't. It was concern for a fucking virus. And the closest thing we have to relate to that was the SARS epidemic that happened in the early 2000s. So we got to start being genuine, ladies and gentlemen. It's, you know, we got to start being a little more genuine and a little more considerate, but real. And if the truth gets harder, so be it. Let's be hard about it. No, I don't agree with giving $10 million to Ethiopia. At this point in my life and what I have seen the past 5 years in this country, how much more do we have to give away before we start looking after ourselves? Right? You want to look like a hero and give away Canadian dollars to prove that you're some kind of progressive, woke individual. Well, sorry, you're doing it wrong, buds. You know, and people who have backed you up, they're doing it wrong too. You know, you're not doing it for the good of Canada. You're doing it for the good of the party and the interest that the party has. So you obviously don't care about Canada. And I've heard numerous things from family members and from friends of mine. Well, you know, this leader did this back in the 80s and this leader did this back in the 90s. And I've heard that dynamic. And whether it's a chain of events that come together for this or not, my understanding of being a leader is making the tough decisions and standing by them, good and or bad. Owning your shit. This man doesn't own his shit. He wants to give it away and blame others. You know, he still blames Harper. Oh, fuck. And, you know, regardless of how many times I've disagreed with Stephen Harper, he kind of kept a lid on things. Kept things, you know, secure, real. There was a surplus. Where's that surplus now? It's part of our debt scheme now, right? The best way to help countries like Ethiopia and other nations is to show them how to do things, right? If they want to be shown. And if they don't, well, leave them the fuck alone. Don't give them a handout. Start investing in this country again. And that goes for all parties. It doesn't matter if you're NDP, conservative, liberal. It doesn't matter if you're rhinoceros, libertarian. I could care less. Start looking after this nation. Where are the priorities for Canada now? Right? The last election proved that there's no priorities. So while the country is being divided intentionally by our leadership, okay, let's give more money away and leave one hell of a mess for future generations and for future leaders alike, right? It's a fucking joke, ladies and gentlemen. Another bloody joke brought to you by the Liberal Party and the Canadian taxpayer. We're on the bill yet again. So, something to think for yourself there, ladies and gentlemen. It's I'll leave links at the end of this podcast to back up my statements, but you decide, So, carrying on, the media license talkback. Mr. Robert Guilbeault, Mr. Heritage Minister, was quoted saying in last Sunday's question period, there should be a license for media outlets. And I'll leave a link to that too. And I'll also leave links to how he stood back and did a talkback or doubled back on what he said. Now, what gets me is that I don't care if you're conservative, liberal, libertarian, any government official claiming in a democracy that there should be a license for this and there should be a license for that, and media outlets alike, such as myself, a few of my friends, Canadian Libertarian, Daniel Boardman, Aaron Gunn, Freebird Media, Black Sheep Truth Media, Rebel Media, TNC, every independent outlet would be effective if a decision like that went through. What does that tell you? In Canada now, one of the best democracies, I think, on the planet, and you want to get out there in the world and speak your mind, you need a license for that? That's fucking ridiculous. There's enough regulations already with the CRTC in regards to what you can be broadcasted and what cannot be broadcasted. Now, I'm not saying any Joe Blow down the road can get on a microphone and spew garbage. Some of you think that my work is garbage. Well, that's your opinion. But I still have a right to do it. Just like any teenage girl can get on YouTube and give instructional makeup videos. Or any freelance soccer player can get on Vimeo or YouTube or what he or she likes and do ball tricks, right? You, the viewer, and the consumer have the right to decide what you want to see and hear and what you don't want to, see and hear. We don't need government standing up saying, okay, well, you need a license for that. Yeah. Sometimes your content, you swear a lot, so you should get a license for what you do. Right. So I spend the money and the time and the effort in researching and putting things together, putting together a soundboard and putting together a recording apparatus and buying the microphones, just so you can tell me I need a license to do it. No. It's enough already that we need a license to put our cars in the road. I just spent $95 on getting a sticker again this year. Yeah, what's that tell you? So you're proposing that I get a license to spend $95 to do what I'm doing right now, and every other internet media conglomerate or every other independent person out there? Fuck that. But there should be a call for concern to that. Any politician in his or her right mind saying that on national television, and then, of course, doubling back on it. Oh, no, we don't want this, we want that. Oh, no, we don't want you to be afraid and be scared. And yet you would encourage that fear to begin with the moment you open your mouth up to discuss it. To even think about that in a democracy right now, right? Doesn't Red China do that? Don't they regulate their media? North Korea, Cuba, right? Do they not regulate all that stuff? And yet you want to propose? Are you in your goddamn mind? You want to propose that here in Canada? Right? To even mention it is ludicrous, ridiculous, stupid. You name it. Right? Like, fuck. As I sit here and I read some of this garbage, I'm not going to repeat it. I'll let you decide. I'll leave links at the bottom of the page here, as usual. But ladies and gentlemen, please, we got to speak out against this dogma. We got to speak out against this crap. Like, more and more every day, you just keep piling on the crap. And we got to get our pitchforks and our shovels out there and shovel it away, Try to find the positive in this sometimes, and it gets difficult. It gets really, really difficult to listen anymore to some of this bullshit. It gets difficult to sit and process the logic or try to understand the logic that these clowns promote. Okay? My Canada includes all media outlets, big or small, all telecom, all radio, all production companies, everything. Everyone out there that wants to get the word out, as far as I'm concerned, has a right to do it without having to get a license or to be screened or to be registered with any kind of government office. That's just bullshit. And I'm concerned. I'm not going to try to tell you what to do, ladies and gentlemen, but you should be concerned too, right? Whatever happened to just turning on a radio without worrying about anything being harmful? Whatever happened turning on television and not worrying about more regulations, The government's got no place in private broadcasting. Government's got no place in public broadcasting as far as I'm concerned, right? Who are you to tell me what to hear and listen to? Who's anyone to tell you what to hear and listen to? That's you, up to the individual, the consumer. You decide, not the government, not the municipality, not the province, not the state, and definitely not the fucking federal government, right? To my viewers in Europe, my listeners in Europe and viewers in Europe alike, this is what's going on in Canada right now. I'll be leaving links here on my page there in regards to some of the stupid things that these government officials have said. And not to mention, too, Mr. Robert Guilbeault was arrested, I think, in 2001 for trying to climb the CN Tower. So basically, he's a shit disturber who has a government job. Wow, go figure. I don't know the story about that, but I'll leave a link to that, too. I didn't watch the entire program on that, but, it just goes to show how our leadership is appointing other leaders to run things and look after things. There's a crisis going in here with our pipeline without a province protesters trying to stop what's going on. And yet, Prime Minister Trudeau is in Africa giving $10 million away for gender parity when the prosperity and the economic power of this country is being compromised. Now, I don't know. As a libertarian, I believe, do what you want. My lifestyle is not being affected because of who's protesting in BC or who's protesting in Quebec or what have you. But I use my democratic right to vote, and I pay taxes. Unwillingly more now, if anything, because of the squandering of our resources and the squandering of our cash to people. But I know, you decide, folks. Tell me what you think. You can reach me at CrustyBCanuck67@gmail.com, or you can find me on Facebook at Krusty Canuck, on Instagram at Canuck Krusty, and on Twitter at John M. Irwin number 3. I'll leave links at the bottom of the page. And if you feel like donating, please do. Please comment and like and subscribe and share on my Podbean and on my YouTube channel exclusively. Please let me know what you think. Send me a comment or two. Send me a thumbs up. Help with the algorithm. Help us independent media folks, independent commentators get into the scene, right? Without relying on mainstream media. I do this because I like giving my point of view. It's very therapeutic, and it can be quite relaxing at times. Get out there, get the words out. We have the ability to do it, ladies and gentlemen. So why not support it? I'll leave links at the bottom where you can support me financially if you so desire. And my offer is still on with my Teespring account where you can find my merchandise. If you donate $5 to $10 a month, a committed donation, I'll mail you a free t-shirt of your choice from my Teespring line. And don't forget that 30% of every donation and or sale that I receive from you, the good people, I will give it to the Veterans Association Food Bank in Calgary, Alberta. Veterans Association Food Bank, they help veterans get back on their feet, provide good, nourishing food and opportunities for employment and success. They're run by veterans, and they help the community out with building walkways and pathways for wheelchairs and disabled vets and persons alike. They shovel sidewalks, and they got a great volunteer program that helps people out. So, and if you'd like, you can give to the Veterans Association Food Bank on your own time. If you give $25 or more to them, they will give you a tax receipt, so it'll help with tax time. And well, they're just good pillars of the community. I discovered them after I left the service, and wow, the incredible work they do. I managed to raise $500 for them just before Christmas, and that gave them a bit of a boost, and that helped them along the way too. So if you'd like to donate in your own time, you can. If not, you can donate to me too, and I give them 30% of everything that I've sold and earned so far. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, enough of my sales pitch. Back to the whole media licensing thing. It's all very 84-ish, 1984. You know, that was mandatory reading for us in high school. And what I remember of the book, you know, our little hero Winston being persecuted and treated like crap. You know, the whole 4 lights versus 5 lights. So we're seeing it. You know, we're seeing it up close and personal. So my best advice for this is to get off our duffs and say no. Show it. You know, get off our butts and say no fucking way. You're not doing that. Right? There are lots of people I've seen on YouTube and podcasts I've listened to, and some of the opinions I don't agree with, but I'm not going to sit there and try to silence them and demand any kind of government action, you know, against them. You know, if they're preaching hatred, i.e. they want to separate races and they want to put people here and put people there like some kind of ridiculous conglomerate, then yeah, I'll speak out against it. But to any man or woman out there speaking their fucking mind, let them do it. Nobody says you have to listen to it. Nobody says you have to download. Nobody says you have to acknowledge them. But if you like what people do, and if you like what they're saying, support it. You know? And I'm not talking about me here. I'm talking about other guys out there and other gals out there who speak their minds. You know? As I mentioned before, a Canadian Libertarian, Daniel Boardman, you know, Aaron Green. You know, there's lots of Canadians out there that get out there and speak their effing minds. And we should. We should be out there more often. We should be speaking our minds. We should be putting these people to account. What are you trying to promote, Buckeye? You know, what are you trying to say? What are you trying to do? Are you nuts? You know, get out there and, yeah, fucking sock it to them big time. That's just me, though, folks. You know, you start screwing with people's minds and start screwing their own personal liberty and their personal choices. You're swimming in shark-infested waters. So, I think a shitstorm's brewing, but hold our ground. Right? We got to hold our ground, folks. That simple. You know, as they're carrying with the whole licensing and this whole Trudeau debacle, more handing out money and then telling us what to think and hear, it's just becoming a real shit show. And I hope to God there's a vote of non-confidence coming up. That's the way I can look at it parliamentary, you know. In a parliamentary system, vote of non-confidence, and then time to get a new prime minister. But then it's going to cost taxpayers more money again. So, careful what you wish for, right? You know, double-edged blade. Yeah. It's tough to say. I know, tell me what you think. Reach me at CRUSTY. I'm sorry, brain fart. You can reach me at CRUSTYBCANUCK67@gmail.com. Or you can find me on Facebook under Crusty Canuck, Instagram, Canuck Crusty, or here in the Podbean and YouTube. Send me a comment. Give me a thumbs up, like and share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Help us independent folk with the algorithm. Keep things on the go. Well, tell the folks at YouTube and Vimeo and all these video headers alike that, yeah, we got a voice and we deserve to be heard. Right? And I'll leave links to the above mentioned too, to check out their work as well. I actually met the Canadian Libertarian. We did an interview, and he's quite informative. And I had a email tag with Daniel Boardman. Interesting guy, you know. He's got a lot to say, and he's quite articulate. You know, there's a few more I'll mention there later too. But hats off to those individuals. Hats off to all the independent media conglomerates out there, Canada and the United States alike, even Europe. You know. Everybody who just speaks their mind. We got to do it, folks. We got to do it. If the government can stand on television and tell us what to do and how to do it with our lives, well, we can come into our own medias and tell them how to live their lives too, and tell them what they should do, because they're working for us, are they not? You would think so, but I guess not, right? I guess not. Right. But we keep working for ourselves, keep fighting for our own personal freedoms and liberty, freedom of the press, freedom of association, freedom of speech, you name it. That doesn't matter if you're on the left side or the right side. I know a lot of conservatives, and no, they're not far-right conspiracists, and they're not Nazis. And I've actually had some decent conversations with people on the left side of the spectrum, too. And they're not commies. A little bit slow, but they're not commies by any means. But, democracy is far, far superior than any kind of totalitarian regime. History has proven that. It's not perfect, but I'd rather live in a democratic state than any kind of pseudo-socialist or pseudo-communist apparatus. Right? And when you hear about our government giving away more money, and then even having some government members, hint at a license or permission to promote your product, it just gets fucking ridiculous. So, and this whole thing with the coronavirus, and this whole thing with the natural gas pipeline in BC, people finding protesters from other parts of the country with nothing else to do besides fucking stir the pot and cause shit. All these protesters and worry about the climate and the Extinction Rebellion. It's like, fuck off, people. Come on, there's bigger problems here than your so-called scare tactic. Right? So it's time we start being real. Start being effective. Right? Get out there, protest it, stand against it. I'll leave some more links into regards of my references here. But ladies and gentlemen, we can do better than that. Anyway, as I've said before, please comment, like, and subscribe and share. Help with the algorithm. Help get our voices out there. It starts with you, the individual, the listener. And if you like what you hear and see, by all means, click like, subscribe, comment, and share around. By all means. Anyhow, this has been another episode of the CRUSTY CANUCK podcast for a February 8th, 2020. Next couple of weeks, I'll be trying to work on a video. Just been working a few extra hours lately, so time is a bit of a constraint, but I'll do what I can to get another episode up and running, whether it be a video or another podcast like this. And please consider donating and prolonging this endeavor. And I will see you next time. All right. Take care, and remember, humanity merit wins the day. Take care. Talk to you soon.
Hit it, sweetheart. Because I am hard, you will not like me.
Aye, sir.
There is no racial bigotry here. Here you are.